Hello lovely people, I'm Jessica, this is Matilda, and welcome to a very British video. Not that the things I'm going to be talking about don't apply to different countries, the figures will just be slightly different. You'll hopefully also still find what I'm talking about very interesting. I'm just warning you now that this British accent is 100% real, although people do question it, which is weird. I mean, I'm not like, secretly French or something, as my dear wife and I proved when we butchered the language in a video. Today, though, I'll hopefully be offending no one but bigots. And amusing you along the way. If you'd like more content like this, then do hit the subscribe button down below as I make videos twice a week. Ahem! In England, we have an arm of the government called the Department of Work and Pensions, DWP. They are responsible for welfare, pensions and child maintenance policy. They're also responsible for everything disability related, from giving you that official tag that allows you access to the services that you need, or paying disability benefits, to building a ramp at your place of work, or paying for a sign language interpreter to come with you to job interviews. All of that goodness. Unfortunately, the way the British system works is that the person who is in charge of each department in the government changes incredibly often, and with every new term, and they're a politician who likely doesn't know anything about that area and has absolutely no prior experience there. So it's not really the best idea. Although everyone who works in that department is a civil servant and they've been in there for years and they actually know what they're doing. But the main guy in charge, no clue. That's actually really rude. Okay, some people have a clue. Some people know what they're doing. A few years ago, the department was run by a man called Ian Duncan Smith, who became known as the Grim Reaper, and recently has said some even more stupid stuff. Good. Including that companies should hire disabled people because they are so grateful for a chance to get out of poverty that they will work longer hours and forego holiday. Admittedly not as bad as the time that he said that the government shouldn't help people with disabilities get out of poverty. The only option is that they go to work. And I guess if they can't work due to their disability, then they die, I guess? He didn't really give an alternative to that point. Oh, and that time that he said in Parliament that non-disabled people are normal, which I suppose makes me abnormal. I mean... Guys, I've been an alien all along. Oh yeah, admittedly that's not as bad as the time that he created a program that changed the rules on what makes disabled people fit for work or not, and then 2,380 people died in 6 weeks, which is like 56 people a day. A day. Context, the UK is not that big. Oh, and then there was that really awkward moment when the United Nations investigated his department and that programme for human rights abuses. Oh, and that time that he said that doctors shouldn't actually have a say in whether someone is too ill to work or not, because he should. I don't actually know who he thinks should be able to decide on whether a person is ill or not, but just not doctors, because apparently they don't know stuff. Med school? Who needs 10 years of study? He's just clever and knows stuff. I mean, he's like a treasure trove of hateful content. Who needs YouTube drama? Okay, but back to his most recent comments. I recently made 2 videos with Jem from WheelsNoHeels all about employment and disability and what it's like having a job when you're a disabled employee. And we've both talked about how we did things that were actively bad for us as people, physically and mentally, because we were just so grateful to have jobs and so scared of losing them. A few fun facts. Being disabled means you're more likely to live in poverty. Oh my god, no one saw that coming. On average, being disabled costs you £570 a month more, but that is just an average. There are some types of disabilities that don't cost you anything at all, and then there are others that cost you way more than that. Also, again, that's a month. Every month. After housing costs, the proportion of working-age disabled people living in poverty is 28%, much higher than the proportion of their non-disabled counterparts. Also, we should probably bear in mind the fact that disabled people are less likely to leave home. So there's obviously a number of people who are still living at home and therefore don't have housing costs taken out of their overall monthly budget, but they are actually still don't have a lot. Okay, and if you think that it's like a small number of people that we're talking about here, I should mention that 19% of working age adults, that's those who are 18 to 65, have a disability. 19%. That's almost a fifth of that age group. But the employment rate for that group stands at just 50%. And that's bloody terrifying. Side note, if you think I'm only talking about physical disabilities, it's worth mentioning that a quarter of people with learning difficulties, a speech impediment, or mental health condition are in employment. A quarter of people. Kind of thinking that other 3/4 could really appreciate those benefits he's trying to cut. So what Ian Duncan Smith seems to be suggesting here is that companies play on that fear by flouting employment law and encouraging disabled people to work themselves to the bone without taking any kind of break, the breaks that they are entitled to, because money. He's also implying that yes, disabled people should be grateful for anyone coming along and lifting them out of poverty. How nice. After all, it's up to you to save yourself. And if you can't, death. Or just bankruptcy for your family. Whichever. Thing is though, if you're American or from a country that similarly doesn't have a state socialised healthcare service, then you're probably thinking, actually, that sounds pretty familiar and it's not really out of place. Why get upset? But I live in Great Britain and I pay taxes expressly for the purposes of looking after people. Now you can start to cry misuse of funds and talk to me about the anecdotal examples you have of how many millions of pounds a year are handed out to people who don't really deserve it or are just faking a disability. But no, of every £100 spent on disability benefits, only 50p is fraudulently claimed. 50p. That is actually the lowest level of all benefits. You should really be looking at Doris down the road. She says she's 92, but she's actually a 20-something with a really bad skincare routine. The whole conspiracy that loads of disabled people are faking it is really just propaganda. From the man. I mean the government. But I think the man sounds scary, so. Politicians have created the rhetoric that welfare is no longer an entitlement. It's now a privilege that should be earned. Ministers promote the disgust at benefit scroungers and push the idea that work is the best way out of poverty, despite feeling entitled to freely claim things on expenses. Hey, MP Frank Field even says that bosses should pay disabled people less than the minimum wage. Because we're less human or something? Unclear on that. So this is all a bit poo. Let's end on a happy note. If there was a 10 percentage point rise in the employment rate amongst disabled adults, that would add an extra, wait for it, £12 billion to the exchequer by 2030. I mean, disabled people literally saving the economy. Here's another positive. The spending power of families with at least one disabled person is estimated to be £200 billion a year. That's a lot of money that could be funneled towards companies that support disabled people and have good practices. Basically, it's hard not to feel like you're just one person in a whole sea of people. But together we can turn the tide. If you can spread a message of acceptance and tolerance just to the people around you, and then they spread it out just to the people around them, and then they do the same, think how far that could go. You can be the difference, and you can make a change with every thought and with every action. You can turn the tide on this rhetoric. Disabled people are actually a pretty cool and essential part of society, and helping people financially helps everyone. You can't measure a person's worth in their monetary value. There are other ways in which people can contribute, and you can help share that new way of looking at people. So I thank you for watching this video, for listening to me, and for being a generally cool human being. Please share this video and see what changes you can make in the world.